Hello magical hands, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jessica and thank you for stopping by, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for always coming back. Today's tutorial is going to be a recreation of this picture right here on the screen. I've been wanting to make this for a long time and today we're finally making it, and this tutorial is going to be a full tutorial, meaning there will be no part 1 or part 2. Everything you need to learn how to make this dress is in this particular video. So without any further ado, let's dive into the video proper. So the first point we are going to mark on this pattern paper is the zip allowance, and right from that side inwards I'll mark in 1.5 inch just as seen, and I'll make a straight line across that point. Now all your measurements is going to start from this zip allowance inwards. Now we're going to start marking our basic bodice points. First line I'm going to mark is my shoulder to my bust point, which is 11 inches. I'll make a straight line across that point. Next point is my shoulder to my under bust line, which is 14.5 inches. I'll mark and I'll make a straight line across that point. The next point will be from the shoulder to the waistline, which is also known as the half length. You'll mark that point and make a straight line across it as seen. Make sure to use the picture illustrations on the screen to get your measurements correctly. Then the next point we are going to mark is going to be from the shoulder to the hip line, of which I marked 26 inches, and I'll make a straight line across that point. And then the last point will be the full length of the dress. So this pattern paper, it stops at 38 and I want my length to get up to 40. So I just went ahead and taped more to this, and you can see I have my 40 over there. After indicating what the line stands for, we'll move to the top part of the pattern paper, and right on that top part we are going to mark the width of the neckline, of which I am going to use 3.5 inches, and then for the depth of the neckline I will also use the same 3.5 inches. I will go ahead and connect those 2 points together with a curve. Now still on that top line, make sure that I am marking from where the zip allowance stop. We are going to mark your shoulder measurement divided by 2. Mine gives me 7.5 inches, and at that point I'll come down by 1 inch, and I'll go ahead with my ruler and connect this 1 inch to meet the neck width of 3 inches. That is going to be our shoulder slope or the shoulder slant. Now from that shoulder slant we are going to mark downwards our armhole measurements divided by 2. Connect it with a straight line as seen, and then you will now extend it to the right side. That is going to enable us get the armhole curve. Now find the midpoint of the armhole line, which is 4 inches, and right at that 4 inches you mark inwards half an inch. Now just go ahead and place your curve ruler as seen. From the top part to that half an inch to the base, in one swipe you will just get your armhole curve. Now you're going to mark your nipple to nipple measurements divided by 2 on the bust point line down to the hip line. Your nipple to nipple measurement, which is your apex measurement, make sure to mark it on that point. Mine is 4 inches. Connect it with a straight line as seen, and then on the waistline we are going to mark half an inch apart from the apex measurement. Once you mark that, you are going to connect that half an inch apart from the apex measurement. You are going to connect it to meet the apex measurement on the bust point just as seen, and you also connect it to meet the hip line, okay, the apex measurement on the hip line. Remember, we only took half an inch around the waistline, and then we'll connect it as seen. This is our dart line, okay, this is the only dart that this blouse will need. Now we'll start marking our round bodice measurements. On the bust point line you mark your round bust measurement divided by 4, and then we'll skip to the half length line. On the half length line you mark your round waist measurement divided by 4. Make sure to replace what we have in that dart area there, because we are going to be sewing out that dart, which is 1 inch. And then on the hip line you mark your round hip measurements divided by 4. Okay, since there is no dart to replace there, just go over and take your hip measurements down to your full length. Now we'll go ahead and connect all these points that we've marked together. And then remember that we didn't add any sewing allowance. We are going to add the sewing allowance to the fabric when we are transferring the patterns to the fabric. Extend the neckline into the zip allowance. In order to create this brown effect, on the bust point close to that zip allowance, I'll go upwards by 1 inch, and on the under bust line, I will go upwards by 1 inch as well. Now I'll use my curve ruler to connect those 2 points together as seen. Then make sure to extend it into the zip allowance very straight as well. So now we are going to also create that lower bodice effect, and on the half length I will come down by 1 inch, and I'm going to just mark from that half length to meet the hip line. Okay, directly at the hip line, I'm just going to mark it to meet the hip line, and then I'll extend this into the zip allowance very straight. So now that I've created the waistline effect, this is everything we actually need for the front piece. I'll just indicate that part to be the brown part. That's the part that's going to have the brown fabric, and then I have the zip, and then the zip allowance, just so we are not confused. The top part and the lower part is going to have the white fabric. So in order not to confuse us, we are going to go ahead and start working on the front piece first, because the front piece is like the most serious part of this work. I will start with the brown fabric, which is for the belt side, and I'll just go ahead and remove the dart of this belt. I know it is better for you to, use sellotape to close your darts before marking that back waistline on the lower part, but not to worry guys, I'll show you guys how to go over it. After removing the darts, you will see that the belt fabric is going to be in two separate pieces, and we'll just go ahead and transfer it to the fabric. While cutting this, instead of adding the regular 1/2 inch seam allowance all round, I decided to add 1 inch all round, because I want to be able to have enough so that I'll be the one trimming off any excess or uneven measurements. Now I'll go ahead and cut the second part of this. Remember, this fabric is in two, so I am cutting two separate pieces for each of them. So just go ahead and make sure to add exactly 1 inch sewing allowance so you can be able to trim off any excess by yourself. For the top and the lower part, I'm going to split my patterns using my free hand. You are going to split this. Make sure that the zip side is on the straight side of the fabric. Just find any tool around to, hold these pattern papers down, and then you can go ahead and start cutting. While you're cutting, make sure to still add the necessary seam allowance. Okay, remember we did not add sewing allowance. Forget the fact that we slash and spread this, and I did not use any measurement for the slash and spread. That is for the top part, and then we are going to move over to the lower part. Also for the lower part, we are going to slash and spread in order to create the volume that it has in the picture. And you can see that for this slash and spread, I am not using any measurements. Make sure to also add up your seam allowance while cutting this. Make sure to add your sewing allowance rightly. So now I'm going to open up the brown pieces as seen. Remember I told you guys to cut them in two separate pieces, and this is what they all look like. Make sure to arrange them as they should be. And now we're going to place them right face facing the right face, and we are going to join them together. That's that line. Remember to sew out 1 inch because that was what we added. So now that I've sewn it, you can see that the ends of the darts are not equal, and that was what I was saying about us closing the darts before doing that back waistline. And that's why I told you guys not to worry, but to add 1 inch sewing allowance all round. Now we are going to trim that part, and trimming this, it's not going to affect our original measurement because I told you guys to add enough allowance. So just take your time and trim this off properly. So after trimming the 1/2 inch allowance all around, we are left with only 1/2 inch allowance, which we are going to use to join the top part to the brown piece and to join the lower part to the brown piece. So guys, just open up all your white pieces as seen. Now we'll take each of these pieces to our sewing machine, and we are going to sew a very loose stitch on them so we can pull gathers around it. So this is one of them, and I'm going to pull one of the thread, and I'm going to use it to pull the gathers. Now these gathers are going to pull is going to make the top part small. It's going to make it equal with the brown piece underneath it. Also, when you're pulling your gathers, make sure that you have it gathered more around the dart line. Okay, where we have that dart line, make sure that your gathers are centered more at that area. Now you go ahead and draw the gathers for all the other white pieces. Make sure that they are all equal to the brown piece. After that, we are going to place them on each other, that is right face facing the right face, and we are going to join them as seen. We are going to start with the top pieces first. Now while sewing, make sure you are sewing exactly 1/2 inch, because if you remember, we only have 1/2 inch left to sew away from the brown piece. So after we have finished sewing them together, you can see what it's looking like. It's beginning to look more like the picture. So now you are going to remove that thread that we used to put together. You are going to lose it, because if you don't lose it, any small thing, before you know, your clothes has gathered up. So anytime you make gathers, it's important that after you have stitched, make sure to remove that particular thread you used to do the gathers. I hope you can see what I'm showing you guys. You see the way that I put it and it's still having effect on the blouse. So you are going to take your time and remove all the threads of the gather, but you're going to take your time. Maybe after you're done sewing the whole dress, just take your time and do that. But I just tried to let you guys know it's a very simple tip. And then now we can join the lower bodice to the brown piece. Just take your time and do this properly. So the front pieces are ready. We are going to place them on each other and we are going to sew out the zip allowance. Also, in case I didn't mention from the start, you are going to need a very long zip. As you can see in the picture, this zip cost me 600 naira. I don't know if this is the zip they usually use for bags, but the guy told me it was cool for a dress and I bought it. This is the first time I'm buying a zip up to the amount of 600 naira, and I think it's going to be a really strong zip and I think it will be safe for a dress. So because I wanted accuracy, I went ahead and marked exactly that 1.5 inch that we added for zip allowance earlier, and I'm going to chalk it on my fabric and take this on my sewing machine to join this together with a very loose stitch. I went ahead to open up this zip allowance because I really want this to have that folded line. This is going to make fixing of the zip very easy. So go ahead and open up the seams of your zip allowance. Now let's move over to the back piece. In order to cut my back piece, I will fold the fabric into two. Mind you, we've already sewn out the dart, so all the measurements of this front piece is our exact measurements. I've already pulled the gathers to where they're supposed to be. So what I'll do is to fold my front piece into two and place it on my fabric on the back piece as seen. I'll go ahead and trace out the outlines. The neckline of the back piece will not be as deep as the front piece, so I'm going to use 1.5 inch for the depth, and I will connect it to meet the 3.5 inch we use as for the front as well. So you just see that I use my free hand. I traced out the shoulder outlines and also marked the armhole. Like I said, any parts of this that you feel it does not match with your measurements, all you have to do is to just remove the front piece and place your actual measurements on it. So right at this point, I made a mistake with the full length. Remember when we cut the front piece, I used 40 inches, and then while I was transferring the patterns to the fabric, I added 1 inch for hemming the base. But now that I am cutting directly on the fabric, I marked my exact full length and I forgot to add the hemming allowance. So I later on went to reduce from the front piece so that it can be equal. So don't make that mistake. Make sure that your measurements are very accurate with all the necessary allowances needed. So since there is no dart to sew on the back, we'll just go ahead and place the front piece on the back piece, and we are going to sew out the sides as well as the shoulder measurements. Ignore these gathers. This gathers is just going to give it like a swagger effect in front. It does not have any business with your sewing allowance. So just go ahead and sew out that 1 inch sewing allowance that we added. Exactly, just sew it out. So now I had to trim out the front piece so that it is equal with the back piece. This is very painful because I actually wanted this dress to have some length, but because of my mistake, I am now losing some inches from this. So now that I've trimmed this off, I'm going to go ahead and hem the base, which I'll be using a hemming gum. For a more professional look, just use a hemming gum. Also, when you're putting this hemming gum, if you also want, you can also have the weavers weave the edge of it before putting the hemming gum, but I will have them weave it after I put the hemming gum. So right now I'm folding inwards 1 inch. Now the full length of my dress has reduced from the original plan. I know it's fine. You still see that the dress turned out fine. So this 1 inch I am ironing down is the space for the hemming gum to enter, and this hemming gum usually gives a more professional look. So you see at that center front, I'm going to open it up where that zip allowance would be. I'll open it up because I'm going to join this separately. Okay, so just take your time. You can see me re-ironing it. So now you can place your hemming gum inside that fold and use the heat of your iron to melt down the hemming gum. This method is very neat. For some reasons, my material was folding up as if it wanted to burn. I don't think the iron was that hot, but I think it's the type of crepe that I got. I really can't explain what was happening down there. So after hemming the base, we are going to insert our zip at the point where it should be. So just open this up and fix in your zip. So I've already gone ahead to insert the zip on one side, and I told you guys that that folding line will help you to fix the zip properly. So now I want to make sure that those brown lines are lined properly. Like, it's not like when I finish sewing, I'll see that one of the brown side went up and the other side went down. Now I'm going to now use my pins to pin those brown sides together. Okay, I'm going to, now that I've seen that they are equal, I'm going to fix the pin like from inside. I'm going to use my pin tool. I don't know how to explain, guys, but this is like a easy method of making sure that your zip, your whole fabric aligns at the points they should align. So you can see I'll just use my pin to secure that at that point. I'll do that for both the sides where the brown fabric ends, so that by the time I join this zip, you'll see that they are very, very equal. Now this is what it looks like, and everything is as equal as planned. So we are going to cut out the excess zip. Make sure to leave at least 1.5 inch of zip remaining at that top part. So I cut out this straight band. It is very straight, it is not curved, and I'm going to use it to finish up the neckline. So I'm going to place it as seen, right face facing the right face. I know it is straight, it is not curved. You'll be wondering, is this going to relax? Just go ahead and join that first. So after joining it, you are going to notch around that point that you've sewn. Just take your time and notch neatly. Once you are done notching, this is going to enable it to relax properly when you flip it over. So now by the time you flip it over, you are going to sew very close to the neckline. And this is what it will look like after you've sewn close to the neckline. So this remaining part, you are going to trim it off, because if you leave it, it's not going to make the neckline relax. So you trim it off and leave at least about 1/2 inch that your weavers are going to weave, or if you have a weaving machine that you're going to weave yourself. So just go ahead and do this. There are other methods of closing this neckline or finishing the neckline, and I think other method will be cutting an interface, but I also did not want to cut an interface, so I think this was the best choice. So now that we are done with the trimming of the neckline, I'll still properly do this because I'm holding it on my hand to show you guys. We are now going to fold this to the back and then sew very close up, sew on that same sewing line again, so that we can hold down that zip part. Now for the sleeve, this sleeve is going to be divided into two. The part that is going to have the off-white crepe and the other part that is going to have the brown crepe. Now the full length of my entire sleeve is supposed to be 23 inches. It's supposed to be 24 inches, but I'm going to mark this white one, the off-white, to my exact full length. Okay, we are going to mark it as if it does not have a band. Just go ahead and mark your exact full length. We'll bring out the main bodies of the blouse and we are going to place it as seen. I know this is a lazy method, and if you've been watching my tutorials, you will know that this is the method I use every single time. Now we are going to trace the outline of that armhole. This method is actually very, very easy. Like, it saves me the time of applying all these measurements, and it's always accurate. So now that I've marked that point, I'm going to now mark the allowance. You can see where the armhole stopped and you will see the allowance. So just go ahead and bring it down. Don't even bother about finding your arm measurements or your wrist measurement. Just bring it down, because this is supposed to be like a very big sleeve, but the armhole side is supposed to be equal with the armhole of the blouse. So now we are going to slash this sleeve. We are just going to, because we need some fullness on the base of the sleeve. At this point, guys, my fabric was far exhausted. I did not even know. So we are going to place this on the fabric. So this fabric is folded into 4, and this way I'll have both my sleeves at once. And I've already added my sewing allowance to the pattern paper, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out. Just make sure that the base of the sleeve is big. That is the aim. It's bigger than the top part. For the brown piece, which is the band of the sleeve, you are going to fold your fabric to 7 inches. Make sure you place it on the 4 to 7 inches. I think that is enough for both the band and the sewing allowance. So we'll fold it into 2 and apply our exact wrist measurements, and then make sure to add the sewing allowance too. Now we are going to gather the base of the white part of the sleeve so that it will be equal with the brown side, and then we'll join them together. After which, this is what it looks like. So now we are going to place them on each other, as in like it's right face facing the right face, and we are going to sew up that sewing allowance that we added to the top part. We are going to just sew it straightwards down to the full length. And then now we can attach the sleeve to the blouse itself. So after sewing everything together, I wore this to see what it looks like, and I noticed that it did not have any fitting at all around the waistline. So I had to go in again and hold the waist, because the waist has to be like very snatched for this to have like a really good fitting, just the same way I am holding it, and you can see how beautiful it looks after I hold it behind. So I just went ahead and reduced the waist, and that brought us to the end of the tutorial, guys. I hope you learned something new. If you did, please give us a thumbs up, and see you guys in our next tutorial. Bye.